Welcome to Human Machine Relations. This is the podcast that explores how people and technology are shaping the future of work, creativity, and communication. Today, we're going to be looking at the qualification and career aspects of the communications profession. Generally, we know that there's this extreme competition for entry-level jobs, and added to that now is the pressure of PR roles and job specifications evolving very quickly to meet the demands of technological changes in the workplace. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Nicola Hooper. She's the lecturer in Public Relations and Global Communications Management at the School of Journalism, Media and Culture at Cardiff University. She's also currently undertaking a PhD. She's studying the gap between educational readiness and career progression of the PR professional. Together, we're going to explore the role that academia plays in the comms profession and ask whether it's keeping up with the PR industry's changing requirements. Welcome, Nicola. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your industry background before we get into the academic side of things.
Sure. Okay, so I started my career a long time ago, about 20 years ago, in financial PR in London. I worked for a big international PR agency, doing a lot of stuff to do with life sciences, calendar work, but IPO and transactions at the same time. Then had a brief spell in travel PR where I got to fly all over the world, which was wonderful, but a lot more sort of corporate base away from the finance. And then I moved over to being a PR manager in-house at a big professional services company. So the big four was actually number 5 of the big four. After that, I was asked to go over to the Middle East and lead the PR or investor relations element of an IPO on an Iraqi telco. I was based in the UAE, but I ended up moving after the IPO. I then went a lot more into sort of corporate PR, financial PR, in a big agency over there, and I worked my way up and ended up becoming partner in the MD of that company, which had about 20 people in and about 35 clients all over the GCC and beyond. After that, I then relocated back to the UK. I did a guest lecture at Cardiff University, just talking about PR and the industry and my experience in it. And then I was asked to do another one, and then lo and behold, I've accidentally ended up working here. So I'm an accidental academic, absolutely. I am now doing a PhD, looking at kind of the entanglement of skills, exactly like you were saying, more because I seem to like making life complicated as opposed to for any specific reason, but I am really enjoying it. So I'm an industry practitioner really, who's having a go and giving academia a try. So I'm fairly unusual, definitely in my school, and I think across the academic background, having worked in industry and now sort of coming and teaching and educating people who are starting their careers in our industry.
That is such an interesting career. I think you've seen it all and done it all. That's amazing.
Some of it, exactly. Yeah, it's been varied. It's been fun.
So let's talk about your PhD research. What first sparked that interest in the gap between educational readiness and career progression in PR?
Yeah, I think having worked in both industry and academia, I could see there was a disconnect between the models that a lot of the students are looking at and how it works in practice. So a lot of the time you might hear students saying, why are we studying this, or how is this relevant, or anything like that. And I did actually find that going in, it was a lot of the models and frameworks that we use are sort of pre-social media, pre-internet. Some of them,
some of them are from the 70s, aren't they? Yeah,
exactly that. And they're based on kind of 50 US companies from the 70s, which is both a different culture, a different change, different time. And we're trying to get people to apply this to contexts all over the world. And it just jars a little bit. So what I found was that having recruited people, having managed people's careers through my agency and through different in-house teams as well, I could see that the people who were coming out of university perhaps had too much theory based, and when I said to do something practical, I had to start again with the practicing. And then people who were in industry and were sort of hopped straight into PR potentially didn't have much of a background as to why or what we were doing. So there's a disconnect there. And a lot of my work, the modules I lead, are the sort of professional practice. So I get people to do a lot of stuff to do with media relations or media training or a crisis simulation exercise, so that they can bring the theory along and now apply it to real world context. And I think that when you look across MAs, and I have looked, part of my research is looking at all the different courses in the UK specifically. There's a lot of amazing courses out there, really, really interesting, but a lot of them are built and bridged on the theory as opposed to the educational, sort of the employability readiness on the other end.
Yes, not as applied. Yeah.
Exactly.
What made you realize that this was a systemic issue worth researching? Was there, is there a gap in the knowledge? Was there a particular moment for you that said, oh, maybe I should look into this?
I think just basically from the work I was doing, the lecturing I was doing, and the questions the students were asking, and then watching them go out into the world and either get really good jobs and go through, and then they came back and said, oh, that thing you told me about how to do media relations, that's actually really interesting, although we didn't do enough of it, that kind of thing. So maybe I need to then expand how much time we spend in the classroom. So it was my experience in being a lecturer and watching people go out into the world, them come in and then go out into the world. And also I kind of like a challenge. So I was enjoying doing the lecturing, and I thought to be effective at being a lecturer and academic generally, you need the credibility of a PhD. And I like all PR practitioners or good ones, I like people. I like understanding the relationships between people. I like understanding how things work and why things work. And this basically allows me to research an industry I love and has given me an amazing career, work with people, work with students. And I think if you're enthusiastic in PR and researching and reading into things, then it's kind of a natural progression. I'm not a natural academic at all. I really would rather be talking to people than doing quantitative analysis of surveys, but I am learning. And I think there's so many skills that a PR person has that can be applied to academia and back and forward. So again, that gap, really the main gap I found in the research I'm doing is that a lot of stuff to do with skills is very linear. So whether you're looking at literature in theories and models by academics from, like you said a minute ago, from a long time ago, or more recently sort of analysis of job descriptions or role responsibilities, what you'll find is a long list of things, a long list of technical skills. So it might be writing, it might be analyzing something, it might be social media, it might be just digital comms with, what does that even mean? And so there's long lists of skills, and I found that actually I don't believe in this list of skills. When was the last time you, as a human in any concept, just use one part of your brain to do one skill at a time? You're always pulling things together. There's also very little in the soft skills element, and I think, again, people who know PR and know PR people know that we are relying and leaning so heavily on our kind of soft skills to be effective that there's really not much about that. You have to go into other disciplines and areas in order to find that. You have to go into psychology, sociology, in order to see where the skills and sort of interlink between them are. So I believe that we have a list of technical skills as PR practitioners that we have to be good at, and we have to learn, and we have to be effective at in terms of the doing. But to be effective and to actually make those technical skills work, it's a lot of the soft skills that we're applying, whether it's empathy or relationship management or building trust. That makes the difference between a good PR practitioner and a really effective one. So it's that intersect between the soft skills and hard skills, and getting away from a list towards a bit of a mess, spider's web, diagram, ecosystem, whatever the concept metaphor you want to borrow from. That's where I see the gap in the literature.
And without going into your findings, what are some of the key research questions or objectives that you're trying to explore through the PhD?
So I think the soft skills thing I was just talking about, really. So I think what I'm mainly looking at is sort of, so far you can be developed as a practitioner, you might be developing strategy or writing or utilizing digital tools, but these skills are cited as the most important. But it's actually, in my survey so far, I've done initial findings of 100 people from all over the world, and different levels as well. I'm trying to sort of fill out the levels to figure out where it sort of kicks in, but the results are showing me that sort of adaptability, relationship management, emotional intelligence are being rated much higher by the practitioners in industry than potentially writing, which, and by writing, I think people might assume that it's dying out because of AI and because of digital technology. It's really not, because you're writing prompts, you're writing social media posts, you might not be writing long form articles so much anymore, although some people are, but that ability to tell a story and a narrative and tying objectives of an organization into what you're trying to say so that an audience can relate and engage with it, that's still writing. But it takes the understanding and empathy and sort of more soft skills in order to effectively execute the writing, the technical skills. So,
and critical thinking as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And critical thinking, I think, is again, I find PR practitioners overall are quite curious. We're also a little bit cynical because lots of people say, oh, we just, can you just make this famous, or can you just do this, or I need you to do a press release about that. And we have to really balance, is that going to work? To be an actual advisor, a strategic counsel, a strategic advisor, we need to say, actually, I don't think the release is going to work here. Let's do it like this. Let's do something else. So having that critical mind of not just executing, in what some still do, but executing, but applying thinking and data and research in order to apply that idea. I think the critical thinking is absolutely central to it. And that has come up in my survey as being quite a key task, whereas before I think other surveys have focused a lot more on the technical skills, and then soft skills are listed separately.
Yeah. And how's the digital shift? And then we'll get on to AI, but more the digital stuff, which has been happening for quite a while, let's say over the past decade. What does that change? How does it affect what it means to be job ready in PR?
Fair enough. I mean, I would say, having worked there in the industry for 20 years, I think I really was sat there when that digital shift happened. So I remember in the early 2000s, social media burst into mainstream, and I was sat at my desk setting up a Facebook account. That's how old I am. And then also installing Hootsuite, which helped me track journalist requests on Twitter. And this is when I was in the professional services firm, I quickly realized that if you can respond rapidly to keyword searches on Twitter that are journalists coming up saying, does anyone have a spokesperson for this, for that, the other? I was working in tax and pensions at the time. Thrilling, but actually there was a news story all the time, and it was actually deeply relevant to the whole mass market. So it's actually more interesting than it sounds, or maybe I'm just a huge nerd, but still, my ability to respond really, really quickly through using these digital platforms put me ahead of some of my peers. And I think, and I'm by no means digitally savvy, I have figured it out at each point. So I think that 24-hour news cycle shift, which I was there for, and the shift between PR people but needing to be 24 hours as well, really changed the way we do things. I mean, my first ever work experience, I had to fax a press release.
I was posting them. What are you talking about?
Okay, so when I say that to students now, they're looking at me going,
what's a fax?
So anyway, I'm glad you get my reference. But I think, therefore, the past getting your clients in the media has shifted. That media relations changed. It went from long lunches and coffees and people to all on social media and Twitter and DMs and all that kind of stuff. I do feel like it's coming back around again. But I think in the past 10 years, the key skills of building relationships through social media or in person or on email, that has shifted how we work with our clients, how we work with the people, how we work with the media, and our team as well. And I think what hasn't changed, like I said a minute ago, are the technical skills like good writing, like strategy, because whether you're writing, a tweet when it used to be capped at a certain amount of characters, or a caption for a movie or a short media clip, or you're writing more of a long form interview or something like that, or a speech, you've got to be able to tell a story in either tiny amount of characters or, half an hour speech. So that skill of getting and distilling information and making complicated things simple, and understanding the audience you're playing to, and understanding the personality of the person you're writing for, all of those skills needed to be just shifted digitally. It doesn't mean that we had lost them. It just means it's shifted. Now, I know we'll talk about AI in a minute, but I think that we're kind of in the same juncture, is my personal view. I also think the other shift that's been happened because of to make people job ready, to your question, is that cultural understanding has needed to take a big leap forward. I think before, pre-us even, you can imagine when the dinosaurs were roaming at the same time as people were doing PR, we needed to, there was not, you just send your message out. It was very one-way communication. Now in the 70s, you began getting the two-way communication, which is a model by Grunig from a very long time ago, but it was like understand the audience might have an opinion about the stuff you're putting out there.
Surely
we're
not.
now, I imagine, we're now way past that in the terms of personalization. Now, because of cultural understanding, you can't just push your message out and hope it lands. You've got to understand that that word is offensive in other languages, that color has significance in other cultures. Even when you're working in the UK, you split the different regions up, or you split the different countries up, there are offenses, there are ways of doing things and ways of cutting through. Again, when I was in the Middle East, everybody thought Middle East, it's one place. It's not. I was even in GCC, it's 7 places, 7 cultures. Within that, there are multiple cultures, multiple languages, multiple religions, and you can't just go, here's Arabic, because where's the Urdu? And which type of Arabic? Is it Syrian Arabic? Is it Egyptian Arabic? And they've all got feelings about it. So I do feel like that's shifted, and that there's students that are going out there, or graduates or new joiners to the industry, really need to think about not just where they're coming from, but where the audience is coming from. And I think that sometimes if people have been through university and then straight into the job world, they're coming from a very specific place of their upbringing. And we need to sort of have that wider cultural element. And that also, thirdly, I think transparency and accountability have changed fundamentally. Whereas before, the company just had to sort of show what they were doing. There was no accountability kind of behind the scenes. Whereas the internet means that your supply chain is completely exposed all the way through. So there's no excuse for, I didn't know that was happening, or I didn't know where my products came, my materials came from. I didn't know how people are being treated. That CSR shift. So when I was in London doing calendar work, financial PR, there was a shift where you had to show your CSR efforts within your annual reports. And that was kind of an effort for some people. And it was mainly recycling paper and having, and, trying to get an ISO certificate and things like that. Nowadays, we're beyond CSR. It has to be ESG fundamentally. It's not even a separate strategy. It's all got to be based on it. So they're fundamentally the quick turnarounds, the culture, the fact that we're in a very wide world with lots of wide opinions and wide views, and yet the products and organizations are usually trying to reach a mass market in most of cases, plus transparency and accountability, and the fact the internet has everything completely exposed, I think are the main things that have shifted in the past 10 years.
It's interesting you say that. Now, it just occurs to me that, if you think about especially UK agencies, I mean, not all of them, sure, but a lot of them are very, shall we say, homogenous, and and don't represent a lot of difference of thinking, maybe a little bit privileged backgrounds, and some of them are a lot of them are London centric as well. And I think that perhaps the university part of it actually does expose students a little bit to a more global environment and differences of opinions and cultures and languages and things. I mean, it's only going to be a microcosm and not a real representative sample, but still it does help, doesn't it? And I think, I often wonder to myself, because there's a lot of people who have this opinion that PR is not necessary. You don't need to go to university to learn PR. And a lot of people go straight into work after finishing school, or a lot of people will qualify and study something else and then later on move into PR at some point in their careers. Is it something that you can learn on the job, and what are the benefits of having that academic background in it? I
mean, fair question and fair statement. I think like your statement about saying that PR companies and PR industry in the UK is homogenous, you can't, that's stats. There are stats backing that up in the fact that there's a real lack of diversity in the industry. It has shifted an iota since I started. I would say that it is improving, but we are
going, isn't it?
still, and you only need to look at the stats by CIPR to see that we're still miles away from actually any level of representation. And then you look at all the business management stats about inclusivity in boards and representation on boards, and they're far more effective. If you have different types of people with differing views, you get far more interesting and successful companies off the back of it. And I think PR is exactly the same. You can't just churn out the same bits and pieces from the same viewpoints of the same cultures. You will miss things. And so I completely agree with you about that. I think you're right about university. I mean, my course is incredibly diverse. We have a huge number of international students, probably at least half and half UK home students to international students, and they're from all over the place. And I love that every time I start in September, that you kind of do your first introduction, you look around the lecture hall, and it's completely different makeup that you had from before. And what I really encourage, and I think my background as well, having worked in different sectors, different countries and different cultures. I was in Hong Kong as a child, I've been in London, I move around. I am now, kind of as all old people, acutely aware of all the things I don't know, whereas when I was 20 I knew everything. And then I think the more cultures you experience, the more you realize you don't know anything at all.
That brings you right down to earth, doesn't it?
But now I understand that I need to understand, and I can't come in going, this is how it is. Like best practice in PR, okay, there are some skills and there are some ways of doing things, and there are guidance of how to do stuff, and it's going to be quite sort of linear and frameworked if you're looking at crisis management, for example. But can you apply the same thing across cultures? No, absolutely not. And I think that university does really help that. I think my background, I often say to the students, right, here's a scenario in a seminar, for example, work through this, or this is an issue. And then I'll let them work for 15 minutes and go, oh, by the way, we're in Pakistan. And they're like, oh, okay, hang on, this changes everything. I was like, okay, and by the way, you know, you're now being interviewed by somebody from the American media. So that then is different. Or I will set a scenario and say, okay, tell me about how you're back home, how your media will respond to that. Or if there's a student from a totally different makeup of government, say maybe more autocratic, for example, I'll say, well, how would that work? How would you get this message across with certain constraints that you have to work to? It's not about going, it has to be the British way because I'm a British university. Absolutely not. It's kind of where are we in the world? What are we trying to achieve? And who do we ask? And how do we educate ourselves in order for this to work? There are so many examples where people have kind of run into a campaign and hit a brick wall because they haven't thought things all the way through. And at university, well, our course, the international PR bit of our very long-winded title that you did very well to get out in one go earlier is really critical, because I want students to either stay in the UK and bring their culture in and their ideas and their background into their strategy and their thinking, or I want them to go back to wherever they want to work, whether it's a new country or their home country, and kind of bring some influences that they've learned at university along the way. I think when I speak to ex-students, they actually find that very helpful because they can kind of put different hats on, or at least know who to phone if they're not quite sure how something works. Your point about, do you need a PR degree? So for 20 years, so I did business economics at uni, then I did a PR master's postgrad, then I went into industry for 20 years, and I would say that the postgrad I did was very helpful, but I also met people who didn't go anywhere near that, did a history degree, and they were just as good. So as a lecturer, I think I can help give you tools that make the first 5 years of your career much, much easier. There are people who are just going to get this. They're just going to understand it. Their brains are just wired that way. I think university or degrees that have PR within them, or that kind of, even if you're doing business and you have a marketing module or a PR module in it, I think it can really help because it can show that the operations within a business, how to then communicate them. Is it vital? No, ultimately. I think if we have good enough employers to kind of do the CPD, to do the training on the job, I've been lucky enough to do some really interesting training whilst at work. I do think this is a sort of a boiling pot of that information doing a master's, because I've only got them for 8 months really, and I try and jam 20 years of experience into them in 8 months. So some ways it works and some ways it doesn't. I do think that some of the courses could be updated a bit. The issue is that as fast as you adapt your course, the world has moved on. So
Absolutely.
even if you have the most forward-leaning course in the world, by the time you come into the next academic year, things have shifted. So we did a big exercise to rewrite our course last couple of years. We launched it this year. It's gone really, really well. And the way that we've future-proofed ours is to have a lot more data insight element to it, a lot more integration of AI within the tasks that I set, but very clear parameters about where and when they can use it, and what they will get fired for in industry is the same thing we're going to get them for academic misconduct in our world. Is very similar. You can't play something off as your own if it's not. So actually the parameters are very similar. And I think from industry as well, clients are telling me, or agencies are telling me, that the clients are saying, oh, we don't need you to write this press release because we'll get AI to do it. So the skill is shifting. It's not write the release, it's edit the release. It's how can you make this AI release better? It's still writing, it's still editing, it's still storytelling. And we're trying to integrate that into our course a lot. That and case studies. What happened today? What's the big news today? How does it affect you? How does it affect a company? Can you do me a media roundup? How would you brief against this? The kind of using the chaos that is the world into the classroom sort of helps set the tone, and slightly running everything at the same time really, really quickly also helps them train for life in a PR agency.
And do you think that AI also kind of like, in a way, makes, I don't know, makes people lazy? Or I have kind of conflicted feelings about it, because you'll often find that clients don't have budget to do proper research. If, for example, to develop personas and understand, like the buyer's journey and who the audience is, or who the stakeholders is, and what their pain points are, and all of that stuff. And so it's great. AI might be a tool, and we're seeing that increasingly. The AI is a tool for persona development, and that you can even train, agents within or custom GPTs within the LLMs to act like this persona and give feedback and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not really real, is it? And so it kind of worries me that, we, to your point about understanding all of our different audiences, and if we outsource that to AI, we're talking to machines ultimately, and the machines may know a little bit about various audiences, but there are inherent biases built into that, and they don't know everything. It cannot take the place of going out there and speaking to real human beings, can it?
No, I totally agree. And I think it will inevitably make some people lazy. But I think if we look at the massive sort of leaps that our industry and the economy and the world has taken in the past 20 years, the internet, social media, and now AI, yes, it's big and scary. So were the other two. It's still a tool, just like the other two. I mean, hypothetically, social media could have killed out all traditional media, and that would have been the end of that. Instead, there was an evolution. The internet, again, makes, you can just search anything you want to and get the answer immediately. That could have killed off journalism and PR potentially as well. It didn't. We adapted. Some of my interviews actually with experts as part of my PhD, the adaptability, that PR people are hugely resilient and flexible and very good at being adaptable, because we have to be, usually on an hour by hour basis, because the goalposts move, or there's a drama, or you're constantly putting out little fires everywhere. So it's a tool to help you do that. I don't think we need to, maybe, and quote me, don't quote me if I get this wrong, but like,
this is public broadcasting.
It is. I don't worry that it's going to kill our industry. I worry that laziness of the people who are applying it might. But exactly like you said, if you get AI to write something or develop a strategy or come up with an idea, it's scraping from certain sources. It's not applying that kind of unseen hint, energy, vibe you got from the client or the partner, whoever you're working to in that meeting. It might miss completely the soft power element of what you're trying to do. And I think that even though AI is getting faster and faster and better, and it still doesn't stop the fact that there are inherent biases in there because of where it's scraping from. It is regurgitating information it has found. Even with good ideas, it can make links of things together, but it's still not necessarily bringing that human application. And going back to my cultural competency element before, it might have a really, really good idea, but you might have forgotten to say, by the way, we're in Japan, or this is based on, this particular company is based here. And then all of a sudden the nuance is lost completely. I do think it's hugely helpful in a lot of ways, but I'm concerned about how some agencies are applying it. But I do think that it doesn't need to be scary and all consuming, and we need to stay in front of it or fight it. We need to evolve with it and figure out how to make it work for us.
Use it intentionally, right? I mean,
100%, exactly.
And just going back to the soft skills part, I was going to ask you, do you think we're seeing a disconnect between what universities are teaching and what employers are expecting? But I also kind of feel like when you look at job specs, they're not going to list all of those soft skills. So maybe that's part of the problem, isn't it? That they don't articulate, or I don't know who's not articulating it properly. Nobody is. What are those soft skills and how important they are to the job role itself?
Exactly. And I think you're completely right. There's a bit of a problem with articulation everywhere. I think a lot of the it depends which course, it depends which student, and it depends which employer. Some employers, I hope, would be thrilled with the students that I'm churning out, because I really want to apply the professional skills, the professional studies. Other courses are a lot more theory driven, are a lot more kind of debate and academic in the way that they deliver their pieces and that they deliver their curriculum. And there is an argument for both. Some people stay in academia. Most people, in my experience, go out into industry. I think there can be a disconnect, but what I'm finding is that the disconnect is in the doing. It's not necessarily in the approach. And going back to your point about job specs and roles, absolutely. And whenever I've recruited people, they're in front of me, they're in the room because their CV has hit the technical skills. I know that they have a level of intelligence because I've seen which degree they have. I know where they've come from. They've been trained in a certain way, either with a different agency or they've come straight from university. So I kind of know how they're going. What I'm recruiting on is the person in the room. And this is not just me. Thankfully, in my interviews with my PhD, all of my experts and other practitioners who are recruiting say the same. It's to do with and I keep getting the word, the vibes, the energy, the enthusiasm. And I mean,
it's an intangible thing, right?
How Gen Z of everybody, but well, how do you define the vibe? And so I'm trying to define a vibe in a PhD, and it's very tricky. But it's really, again, going back to those soft skills, it's that relationship management, it's that kind of charm and getting your point across and getting a story. I mean, if you think about it, a job interview is a mini PR campaign, because they have your name in your spec as you walk in the room. Now you've got to tell me a story about yourself. You've got to show an element of your personality and your capability, and you've got to show that you can be worked with, to, for, whichever level you're going in at, probably in 30 minutes. And so I think the practitioners that I see come in and do really, really well in interview have that down. And that then means that when I employ them and they go in, they apply those same skills. When people are coming in, obviously they're shy, obviously they're nervous, they're in a job situation, there's allowances for that. But I think people who have that energy and enthusiasm and passion for it, you don't need to be an actor and a performer, but if you really care about either the client that you're trying to work for, or the way the media works, or the way the world works, or you want to influence and make things better with a purpose campaign or something like that, that energy enthusiasm is so clear the minute that people walk in the room. So part of what I do with my students is, and they don't like me for it at the beginning, but I make them do a lot of presenting and a lot of speaking, because I think so many people say, oh, I couldn't do what you do because you have to talk in front of lots of people. So, well, whether you're in a meeting with one person, 30 people, or presenting to a lecture hall of 100, you're still presenting something. It almost doesn't matter. Like, you've got to change your tone slightly in the way you project, but you've got to be clear. You've got to get your point across. You've got to be concise. I'm terrible at that, as you'll see from my rambling. You've got to be engaging. You've got to build a relationship with people, potentially to a room of, if you're pitching in a client team, there might be 10 people there, all looking at you, frowning, nodding, looking at their phones, whatever. You've got to let that roll off you and carry on. And so I make my students present basically every task. So at the beginning, terrified rabbits in headlights, even if they are quite innately confident people, because they're really worried I'm going to go, that's wrong, which obviously I don't do. By the end of it, then even the most shy students are quite comfortable in explaining themselves.
Yeah, I'm not, because it's all practice, isn't it? It's practice.
Totally. And you've got to be able to do that, whether you're in a job interview or promotion, trying to pitch something to the client, pitch something to the media. Getting your point across and not letting your nerves get in the way is a very important skill. So I do think that there's that element of some of the courses, potentially students want to hide behind a desk or a laptop, or just please don't pick at me. And it's like, well, you've kind of missed the point of comms. That's what you want to do. You need to.
I know when I started out in journalism, and I was like, oh, I have to talk to strangers. I have to call them on the phone. What?
I mean, nothing can frighten particular generations more than do these media calls. They will. And I hated it as well when I was younger. You felt like such a lemon, and you get your tongue tied. And the first two were like pancakes. They were terrible. And then you kind of got into it. And so I think it's not like, I mean, and like, I can talk in front of people now, but that is due to 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
My first boss used to make me do a networking thing every week. I had to explain, two of us who were juniors in the team, who did you network with this year? Like, was it taking analysts out for dinner? Was it a big, wide industry thing? How many rooms did you walk into that you didn't know anyone? And I hated it. But I did 2 years of that solidly, and it started not to fuss me. So do I like walking into rooms I don't know people? No, nobody does. But can I figure it out? Yes. And I think that's just practice.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the future of the PR profession. How do you see AI influencing those early career opportunities in PR? And do you think it's already beginning to reshape or reduce entry-level roles?
Yes, in short, yes. As part of my role as a lecturer, I organise a expert speaker program. So every week I get people from my network or around the industry to come in and talk about their role or a campaign they've done or something, so that my students can see kind of lots of different areas of PR and decide which one to go into. And obviously we have a chat before, during and after. And what I am seeing is when I started in 2019 with the lecturing, there were so many grad programs available. Almost every single either agency and in-house had grad programs for the PR teams available, and it was very competitive, but it was possible to get one. They've gone. They've almost entirely disappeared. A lot of them are being replaced by internship schemes, which are shorter, less formalized in a way. It might be that there's a campaign here that they need extra help with or something like that. So for students, there is a much smaller leap or sort of gradual progression into the career world, where I think before you could kind of do a grad scheme and you would kind of be halfway house, because a lot of them would move you around departments and you would get exposure to lots of things before you had to commit to something. Now it's kind of straight into a role, or the internship, which doesn't give you much exposure to what you're doing. The other thing I am seeing is some agencies are stripping out the junior levels entirely. So they're saying we only hire strategic counsel or people, experienced practitioners. Now, I can see why. I can see the business case of why. However, I'm concerned about their legacy planning there, because as people move on, that where is the talent coming from? Or are we
Well, the
just
pipeline is gone, isn't it?
the pipeline is gone? Because if everybody does that, how are you training the younger people? And I don't know about you, but in my career, I learned from sitting next to or around super smart people who are very, very good at what they do, all with their own personalities. So this person would be like this on the phone, or deal with a difficult client like that. She would deal with it differently. He would deal with it differently. And listening and being in that environment helped me build my style and my approach and my experience. Now, if you're not allowed in an office, how do you become a senior practitioner or have any level of experience if there's just not the roles there?
Yeah,
That's
we've
not
seen that
everybody.
since COVID, right? Because people since people were working remotely and that shift happened, it became much more difficult for entry level junior people to learn on the job, to get opportunities even where they would be seen or put in front of somebody more senior and get the chance to impress somebody. Those chances just were gone. So already like it was starting to erode from there, and then these AI automating entry level tasks has now just made it, what I would call it, almost apocalyptic now.
Completely. And I think even in these agencies, when they're only recruiting senior people and using AI for the admin tasks, that means that the senior people are having to prompt the AI to do the admin tasks. So really what you're doing is just stretching that senior professional in too many directions, because AI is not at the place where it can do all this stuff seamlessly. Again, going to show my age, that when I was a junior, I remember cutting out coverage from trade magazines.
Mounting press
Mounting
clippings.
it, scanning it, printing it, exactly
Yeah.
this. So, I mean, one example I was thinking of this morning was when I worked at, with a massive airline manufacturer in the Farnborough Air Show, which is one of the biggest air shows in the world. They wanted all their coverage in industry magazines. So that morning, at 6 a.m., I'm cutting out, scanning, trying to make things not wonky. In doing so, I had to scan that magazine. And so I saw the deals of the competitors, and I saw the different pieces of publicity put out, or maybe interviews and things like that. I was gathering information I didn't even know that I was, because I was looking for the cuttings. And then on the way to media briefings, somebody would say, oh, I saw, well, have there been a deal by so-and-so? And I was like, oh yeah, that would 165 million, they bought this. I'd retain that information. Now, if AI just find me the coverage from this magazine, here you go, that depth of knowledge and wider industry understanding is lost. Now, I sound like a complete dinosaur saying that, and I'm not saying that graduates should be cutting things out of newspapers, but I am saying that they should. Yes, AI can do a lot of the admin tasks, but in doing the admin tasks, you are learning the foundations of how media works, how your client works, how your team works, that will make you a better practitioner. If we strip that out for reasons of speed, where is the drain in that information and the knowledge? I think some super keen graduates will still examine the wider world and different types of media, but others are so stretched and so busy that they don't have time to. But that does mean that as they grow, they don't have that foundation there. So I think they really need to have an understanding of the prompts that AI can help them, like how AI can help them in prompt writing. But then that critical analysis we discussed earlier is even more important, because, okay, I have this coverage, but hang on a minute. Has it checked everything? What are its sources? Have I triangulated this data? What have I missed? Because we all know that the one piece of coverage the client's going to find is the one piece you haven't put in the coverage report. So have you fully looked and explored and what AI has handed you back again? Has it missed anything? So I think it has changed the grad or the junior practitioner roles. And yes, AI is far more used in these agencies, and a lot of agencies have built their own systems and they have trained them very, very effectively. And a lot of it is much more simplified. I think building a media list in my age was arduous. Now, not so much. And I think it can be used smartly. But again, going back to what I said earlier, it's a tool. but it cannot be relied upon. And I think if agencies, jumped on it, made big strategic changes that were cost effective, maybe stripping out grad schemes, maybe stripping out certain layers of people that they were employing. But there does now seem to be another shift almost back, I'm hoping, to understanding that their responsibility to the industry and their responsibility to clients to bring people through, because otherwise we're going to have it's going to be an abrupt stop, and there's going to be a real
well, I mean, since the government keeps raising the pension age, we're all just going to be in our agencies, in our Zimmer frames, sort of wandering around, sort of aimlessly.
But there's also then the problem with massive drain on the industry after a certain point, women specifically. The way that agencies are set up, the way that big corporate teams are set up, it's very difficult to retain the level of energy, enthusiasm and time when you have a family or caring responsibilities of elderly parents or whatever it is that takes you away from the office. Yes, COVID has helped with flexibility to an extent, but the client is happy to be flexible as long as you're on call 24 hours a day. So it's kind of mix and match. And I think actually we need to address all the levels of exit, but I'm really seeing, and a lot of the stats, again, just refer to any CIPR stats or any economic stats, this kind of drop off of females over the age of 35, they disappear. And I think if you are stopping graduates coming in and you've still got the exodus, where does that leave you in a few years' time?
We still have apparently ageism as well in the industry. So, I mean, make it make sense, somebody.
Exactly. And it's all quite depressing when you look at the stats. But when I speak to the people, when I speak to the experts on the speaker program, when I speak to my industry people that I'm doing PhDs interviews with, all my students who've gone out to work and are coming back, it is shifting on the inside, and the practitioners are still really happy doing what they're doing. They really enjoy the industry. They really enjoy the buzz of the place and how fast it is. But there is some sort of issues with the structure of the industry that are holding us back in a way. I think one of the things that is coming up really strongly in my PhD interviews in terms of soft skills is integrity and the ethical decision making. And I think whereas 10 years ago, and maybe longer, there was a reputation of PR people as kind of spin or making things up or exaggerating things. In the age of AI, the internet and transparency, you have to have that integrity and the ethical standing. We've got to apply that to our own industry and our own agencies as well. We're not just being feelings with integrity and ethical decision making and looking after people for the organizations we work to, as in clients. There needs to be integrity and ethical consideration of all levels within the agency and in-house as well. Otherwise, we're going to come a bit stuck in a few years. Even if I'm still educating graduates, if they've got nowhere to go, then my course becomes a bit pointless, and then they get stuck and they might look to go to other places. Meanwhile, there's a drop off at the top. So I don't have the answer. I have no idea. Maybe it's another PhD.
I'll keep you busy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, last question, if from your viewpoint, what you think needs to change, whether that's on the education side, on the organization side, or in the industry bodies, perhaps the profession itself and how it regulates itself. How do we safeguard and prepare that next generation of PR practitioners?
I think, speaking from my experience in terms of the education part, I think we need to focus education in comms and prepare people who are looking to go into the industry to make sure that they're thinking critically. So where are the gaps in information? Have I got all the data I need in order to do this? Where has that information come from? They need to think critically, but they also need creativity. And actually, I always say to my students that the most boring clients need the most creativity. So it might sound like you have a super creative job if you're working for a makeup brand or a sportswear brand, but actually they're very formulaic and they're very structured in how they put this creative out. And that's amazing. But you really are creative if you're trying to make a change in VAT hit the front page of the papers. That's creativity. It's different, and everybody's going to find a different version of creativity for them, but we need to teach them how and where to even start, and not just prompt right in order to find the creativity. And also, like I think I've said a few times in this, a love of storytelling, whether it's kind of explaining something complicated or just even understanding the narrative arc of beginning, middle and end, and trying to get your readers to come along with you. Those are the fundamentals. And then I think you can't really teach empathy and integrity or adaptability, but you can show students lots of scenarios and examples and case studies where they have to think that way, and they almost sort of train and lean into that side of their brain, and then it makes them become more effective at that. My lecturer always said to me, and it's stuck in my head every day since, you've always got to think about the other person's agenda. Now, that's true, whether it's a client, your boss, the media, having that level of empathy or emotional intelligence to, why is my client yelling at me? I'm just going to get upset about it. Actually, it's because they're being yelled at by 3 different levels above them. They're on massive tight deadlines. How can you be helpful in this scenario in order to improve your relationship?
How can you not take it personally?
I haven't figured that one out yet, but yeah, exactly that. Like it might feel personal, but so many, almost every single example I can think of where a client is being difficult, it's, I think, almost never because that person is mean or nasty or horrible. It's probably because they have a set of pressures on them that either you don't understand or you can't see, or they're not communicating clearly enough because they don't want to expose themselves in that way. And so I think having advisors who can think human first and sort of connect with people, and again, relationship management, that is going to be the key as the world spins faster and faster and tech goes quicker and quicker. Understanding how you can be of assistance to people and help people, not to the point of you're just helping, but strategically and adding advice and adding value. That's where the benefit of what we do comes into play. A lot of the time, the clients aren't looking for us to tell them what to do. They're looking for advice on elements that they can't see or that they need a different opinion or perspective for. And that's our view. And we can only do that if we're looking at it from lots of different perspectives, and we've got that cultural competence that we were talking about earlier. So I think we need to lean into the technology. We need to lean into what it can do, but it's not replacing critical thinking or tell me how to handle this horrible email that's just come in. Actually think behind it, because I think fundamentally PR is a people-orientated career. You often go into it because you like most people. We're not going to like everyone, but you like people. You like a constantly changing environment. It's exhausting. You can get a thrill out of it, but
I don't like people. I just like writing.
A lot of people say that, but I think you do, or you wouldn't be doing all these podcasts, for example. Like, you're curious and you're inquisitive and you like understanding what people are thinking and what that means for what you're thinking. And I think that analysis, that critical view is exactly what we're talking about. So preparing the next generation, I think retaining their humanness, retaining their creativity and their critical thinking, and using AI in a super smart way that can allow them greater space for empathy, for integrity, for storytelling, for relationship building, in the same way that we used the internet. It's a tool. It shouldn't be as scary as I think it sometimes is. I think we just need to use it smartly.
I think as well, the danger is that we have all this pressure to, the expectation is always got to go faster and faster and faster. And sometimes we forget people are not machines, they're people. So there's a limit to how much a person can reasonably achieve in a day. And when we put so much pressure, especially on grads or junior people in the profession, it's all become about speed and how fast can you churn this out, and really we have to take a decision mindfully to slow it down a little bit. And I think that's Otherwise young people are going to burn out. It's not going to be enjoyable for them if they're just churning, and there's nothing meaningful in it for them.
Totally. And I think it's at
Yeah,
every level. I think it's, if you have worked for 10, 20 years and it's just getting faster and faster and faster, you can't take your foot off. I know so many agencies who don't allow you to put out of offices on, like that you can't be seen to not be there. Well, that's a very fast way to let people burn out, and also to hinder or halt creativity as well, because people need a break. I don't know about you, but I get good ideas, as I'm not sure they are, but I get ideas coming to me when I'm walking my dog, or I'm out with, or like organizing my PhD stuff. If I'm really confused by something, if I take a break and walk away, same with a client issue, I still do quite a lot of consultancy in practice. And if a client's got a real, like, it's a medium, I think I have no idea where to start with that. If you take a break and walk away and come back, you do know the answer. You just can't do it immediately. And then also responding immediately to stuff, you probably haven't taken the time, and then the hamster wheel just gets faster. So I agree.
Never respond immediately.
No, give it a minute.
Creates nightmare clients, doesn't it?
And they come to expect it. And then this is from somebody, if anybody ever listens who worked with me in sort of 2015 will know that I was spinning the hamster wheel as fast as I could, just quick, dealing with so many things, thinking and being really, really effective. And actually I was quite stressing the people out around me, because I was firing emails off left, right and center, and I wasn't giving them a minute either. So it took a maternity leave for me to learn to just calm it down a bit. And in Arabic they say shway shway, which means calm down. So I used to get one of my Arabic colleagues who's Saudi, was very laid back, was like, oh, shway shway, Nicola. Was like, oh, chill out, Nicola. And actually, whilst that was quite a rude thing to say, actually he was right. He was completely right. And I think I try and teach my students now, yes, you've got to manage that relationship. Don't leave them hanging. Don't ignore them, but absolutely send a holder email, or no problem, I will get to that as soon as I can. Would you like me to prioritize this or that? There are lots of different phrases you can use to slow it down and control the game a bit more. And I think, I don't know, God forbid I reference the World Cup because I'm sick to the back of teeth of it, but like controlling I live with 3 boys, 4 boys, one being my husband, who are obsessed with it, but controlling the speed of the game, like calming it down, means that you are now in control. It's not running away behind you. And I think a lot of my students, my crisis sim, for example, I throw scenarios, then I throw emails at them, then I throw social media posts at them, and they have to keep up. And I'm like, okay, you're spinning this faster. You need to slow it down. You don't need to respond to everything. Let's calm it down. And actually, half of the crisis sim is more about handling the speed than it is necessarily the stuff that you're saying. Obviously, that's important, but responding immediately in a crisis is going to get you in a further crisis. So where's your data? How often are you holding emails? How often are you talking to your people and reassuring them what you're doing? So that controlling the speed is a big part of what we're trying to teach them, but also what makes a good practitioner at the end of the day.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Nicola. That brings us to the end of this episode. And I think the defining slogan that we can end it off with is shway shway, just calm down. Just slow it down.
I'm still learning. I will eventually figure it out. But absolutely, just one step at a time, no matter what you're doing. Piece by piece, slow it down, take control back, and not in a MAGA way, but take control of what you're doing and your messaging and your approach, and everything will become a bit easier to handle.
Wise words. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you very much, Nicola, for taking time to come on the show. What did you think about this episode? Is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation, or any question you'd like to ask our expert guests? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and yours could be mentioned on a future show. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear more conversations like this, make sure to follow Human Machine Relations on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks for listening. And remember, the future isn't just about what machines can do, it's about how we choose to work with them. Bye-bye.